Sitting in my local history class. I'm in a wheelchair from the biopsy. And I get a My Chart notification on my phone that says, your test results are in. And I look at my phone and it says, you have 2 masses in your lungs. And I lost it. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm from Akron, Ohio. I was diagnosed with chick dux 4 sarcoma in 2024. My experience with cancer just made me realize my true identity and how strong I am as a person and how real the world is and how important it is to you and who your real friends are. It was my senior year and I was a cheerleader and I was a flyer. And as I was in the air and the basers were holding my feet, I started noticing a really tender pain in the front of my foot. And I would jump or walk and it just kept getting worse. And I was having really bad foot cramps in my left foot and I could not figure out what it was. And it just got worse by the day. So I started noticing that pain in September of 2023. And then it just kept getting worse. So by November, we saw a doctor and he just put me in one of those gray medical boots or something. And that just made it worse because the air squeezing on my foot was just killing me. By December, they scheduled an MRI because after 2 x-rays, my foot was not broken at all. So in December, right before winter break, I had an MRI and they found a mass in the middle of my foot. So then they told my mom that they've seen this before and that we should totally get it checked out and get a biopsy. My mom didn't tell me that though until later. So then the very beginning of January, we see an oncologist. I didn't know he was an oncologist. And he said we need to do an open biopsy. So on January 12th of 2024, I got a biopsy and it ended up being cancer, but we didn't know how bad it was until later. I was just in bed waiting to get better. I couldn't walk for about a month because the cut was in the bottom of my foot. And I kept asking, like, what did the doctor say? Did they tell us what it is? Was it cancer? Was it not? And my mom finally told me, like, it was cancer. We didn't know what kind, unless she just didn't tell me what kind and she knew. I just wasn't that surprised. I kind of think I knew, but I was just like, like, we could cut my foot off. We could get rid of it. Like, foot cancer is not normal. So we could just, I'll be an amputee or whatever. I wasn't too worried. But then after that, they wanted to get a PET scan of my whole body. And I was like, yeah, I'll be fine. Like, whatever. I probably won't lose my hair. Like, cancer in your foot is not that big of a deal. I get the PET scan late January. And I noticed I was having some breathing problems. So I would breathe in and my esophagus would make this weird, like, noise. And it kept getting worse. And I couldn't laugh. I couldn't barely breathe. My back on my right lung was killing me. So we get a PET scan in late January. And I'm sitting in class. I'm sitting in my local history class. I'm in a wheelchair from the biopsy. And I get a My Chart notification on my phone that says, your test results are in. And I look at my phone and it says, you have 2 masses in your lungs. And I lost it. I told my friend, like, we have to go to the principal's office. She was a new principal. She was doing all of my accommodations with school. And I just went in her office and I was sobbing, scream crying, because I found out it spread in my lungs and I was going to have to do like extreme chemo. On February 5th of 2024, I started chemo and it was a really heavy chemo. I started to switch between 2 chemos. One was 2 days and the other one was a whole week. But I was allowed to take the chemo home in a backpack so I didn't have to stay in the hospital. And I did 9 rounds of chemo up until I think June, maybe July. But in June, I started radiation. And radiation was, I think, worse than chemo. It wipes you out, makes you so tired. And I had burns on my foot and in my esophagus. So I could barely eat, barely walk. And that made me lose all of my hair more than chemo. So I had 9 rounds of chemo and then 35 rounds of radiation. And I had 35 on my foot, 5 on my heel, and then 15 on each lung. And then I was supposed to ring the bell in early July. But then I was going to Ohio State, which is where I attend college, to meet my future roommate. And while we're there, we're out to lunch, just meeting each other. I start seizing and I fall off a chair and like I went unconscious. I don't really know what happened, but I know somebody caught me. They called 911 and I went to an emergency room in Columbus. And then they found a brain lesion on my right side of my brain. And so after that, I had to get gamma knife surgery twice, which is like a laser surgery. So they didn't have to cut open my head. And I got that twice. And then I got one more round of chemo. And I rang the bell in August, which sent me into remission. And then I kept doing maintenance chemo after I was done. So I would just get smaller doses of chemo to make sure that my cancer does not come back. And I did that until December 2024. But then I started to suffer more seizures because I was over treated. So in 2025, they put me on an IV treatment called Avastin, which drains brain edema because the tumor was dead, but it was rotting. So it was causing pressure on my brain. So I was getting Avastin to drain the edema. But after that, I lost feeling and motion in my left arm and left leg. I have drop foot and paralyzed in the ends of my left fingers. I'm in physical therapy, but all of that are just complications from the treatment, not even from cancer. From chemo, there's something called mucositis, which causes sores in your mouth and through your esophagus, digestive system. And that is tough. That was one of my main issues. And that's one of the things you cannot avoid. It always happens. It's like blisters. So you just have to stay on top of the medicine. What else? Chemo can make you get sunburnt very quickly. And I had some pretty bad sunburns because you have nothing to protect your body. There's a lot of nausea. You are constantly wanting to puke. You are not hungry in the slightest, so you lose so much weight because you can't eat anything. Chemo makes your tongue so just dry and you can't taste anything. Everything tastes gross. I experienced major weight loss. When I was first diagnosed, I weighed 115 pounds. When I was cancer-free, I weighed 97 pounds. Radiation causes skin burns, blisters. It also causes burns too. At least for me, since I had lung tumors, it caused esophagitis, which burns your like throat and stuff, so it hurts to eat. I'm trying to think. Again, like with the over treatment, since gamma knife is so strong to brain tumors, if you get overdosed with it, you can experience seizures from edema, radiation necrosis, and it's really tough because you think you're done with cancer and chemo and all the treatment, and you think you're good, but you have all these long-term side effects that aren't even from the cancer, they're from getting treated. And it can be very frustrating at times.
Bring it, yes, baby.
I was considered NED. It was like late July. And um, it was just such a relief. I felt so much better, and it was almost like I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I went through that 9 months of treatment and I had a 30% chance of survival, and I did. I did survive. It was such a relief, and I was just so happy that it was over. But my family and I, we knew that you can't just give up. Like, it always could come back. So my doctors told us that they wanted to keep me on maintenance chemo, which is just it's like little kid chemo. So I wouldn't lose my hair, but it would still kill any cells that they missed. I did that for 6 months, and I was not opposed to it at all. It made me feel so like secure and sure that I will be okay. And I loved it. I didn't want to stop. But because of my brain tumor being swelling and all that, and I was considered overtreated, we had to stop. But I would much rather be overtreated than undertreated. So even though I'm having these side effects and paralysis now, I would take that over, unfortunately, dying any day. Chemo was very hard for me because I was scared of missing out on school activities. It was my senior year. Luckily, I was able to attend everything: prom, graduation, you name it. But on my senior night for basketball cheerleading, I was so sick I couldn't even put my uniform on. I was like being held up by my parents. So it was very hard to not attend a lot of school and feel left out. Um, it was also hard, even after being cancer free. I was on steroids for the radiation necrosis. That made me gain a lot of weight, and it made me very insecure about myself for a long time. And I couldn't go out or be with anybody because I just didn't feel like myself. Okay, everybody, I'm doing a get ready with me with an updated story time of my cancer story because I've been getting so many DMs, requests, comments from my last video. Being a freshman at Ohio State, it is so fun. I was so happy to finally feel normal again, and I didn't have to be stuck in a hospital. And it just, I had a lot of freedom, but unfortunately, I dealt with a lot of seizures alone, which was scary. And so I did have to move home for my second semester, but I still attend Ohio State. I'm going back in the fall. What was I gonna say? Um, I did start in the business school, but after going through my whole cancer journey, I decided that I don't want to be in business anymore. I wanted to take on radiation therapy in the pre-med track. And I think a lot of this helped me to realize what I really want to do in life and what I want to work towards in the end. I feel like the person I was before, I was so, I don't know how to word this. I would always, this might sound weird, but the person I was before, I would always put on fake lashes and bleach my hair and fake tan and all of this stuff to look prettier and feel prettier or whatever. And, I have short hair now, and I I just don't look like who I am before, but I've learned that that's okay. And I've gotten so many everybody's like, "You look so pretty bald. I love your curls. I love this. I love that." And I've learned to really really like appreciate the natural things that you are given. And I think I've learned that I'm not going to change things about myself. I feel better accepting the things you're given and not changing things about yourself. If you ever get cancer or if you're ever diagnosed with something, do not give up and keep living. Do not let it take over your body. Just know that there's so much out there for you. And personally, what I did, I kept on living. I acted like my life was normal, and everybody accepted me the way I was, even though I was sick. I looked different. I still lived like I was who I was before. And I think staying positive like that helped me so much through my diagnosis, because life didn't feel different. Yeah, I was sick, and yeah, I was getting treatment, but I was still living the same way I was before. So do not let it affect you in that way. And also, the people who are there for you during your lowest time in your life are the people you need to keep in your life.